Hello, and welcome to another episode of the High Danger Hockey Podcast. My name is Emma Miller, and the dust is starting to settle around the free agent frenzy. So today we're going to look back at the signings of the first few days here in July, the contract extensions, the free agent signings, and which teams have done the best with the resources they have. So without further ado, let's talk some hockey. This year was actually one of the slower starts to a free agency that we've seen in the last couple of years. Mitch Marner was going to be the hottest topic of free agency, and he got traded on June 30th, so he didn't even make it to UFA status. Nikolaj Ehlers took a couple days to make his decision, so it was a fairly quiet July 1st overall. Yeah, there were some signings, re-signings, trades. There was obviously some action going down still, but compared to last year especially, there was not that much going on this year. And that's partially because the free agent market was not as deep as we've seen in previous seasons. Once the top couple of guys were off the market, everything else was a little bit, it paled in comparison to guys like Marner and Ehlers. So we are going to talk about some of the biggest signings of free agency so far, and that starts with none other than Mitch Marner. Mitch was sent to the Vegas Golden Knights in a sign-in trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the deal he signed carries a $12 million annual average, which immediately makes him the highest paid player on the Vegas Golden Knights. And it took a little bit of cap gymnastics to get this done. The Golden Knights just got some really unfortunate news about defenseman Alex Pietrangelo, who is going to need some very serious reconstructive surgery on his femur. And there's really no answer right now as far as whether he's going to even return to the NHL. So his contract is going to be moved to long-term injured reserve, which frees up that space for them to sign Mitch Marner. And there's not much more to say about Marner that hasn't already been said. He is instantly the best player on that roster. He's going to make such a big difference offensively for the Golden Knights. Marner, of course, is coming off of a 102-point season during which he scored 27 goals, but more impressively, 75 assists. And it's really unfortunate to see his Maple Leafs career come to an end the way it did, because I talked about this briefly in my last video, which unfortunately came out about an hour before Marner was traded, so there wasn't a big lifespan on that episode, unfortunately, but I did discuss his potential departure at the time, and I talked about the Golden Knights being the top destination for him, and it just sucks to see that he was practically run out of town. I mean, he's gonna go down as one of the best players in franchise history. He's already top 5 in points, and you know, the last game he ever played for the Maple Leafs, he was booed off the ice, and that makes me sad. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Marner in a new environment and what he can bring to the table, because a lot of people were criticizing him for his lack of performance in the playoffs, but that was a team-wide problem. That was not a Marner problem. So on a new roster with new assets alongside him, like Jack Eichel, that's going to be such a dynamic duo to watch next season, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the two of them skate together. And you know, Mitch is right in the prime of his career. He can only go up from here. And yes, he carries a massive contract now, but he has earned every single dollar of it. And in fact, he could have gotten up to $14 million elsewhere. So the fact that he got signed for 12 is honestly a little bit of a bargain. And there are some people in the NHL circles talking about the state income tax and whether or not that played a role in it. I really don't think that played a massive role in Mitch's decision to be okay and sign with the Golden Knights. At the end of the day, the players are still taxed on where they're playing, and that includes away games, that includes practices, that includes everything. So he's still going to be taxed on half of his salary. Although, again, a lot of people argue that those other 41 games and all those practices that aren't getting taxed are a real nice benefit. And yeah, I'm sure that's an added bonus, but at the end of the day, did that make an impact on his decision? Absolutely not. I don't think so. I think it was more about going to a playoff contender. And, we saw the Vegas Golden Knights exit early from the playoffs this year, but they're just a couple years removed from a Stanley Cup championship. They are very much still a contender for the Stanley Cup, even though they had been eliminated early on this season. So I'm very eager to see what Mitch does with his new team, and even in the first couple of days, it's been really nice to see him. He looks like he's beaming, he's glowing, he's so excited to be a part of this team, and they've given him a very warm welcome. They deserve credit for that, of course. I mean, very exciting to get a 100-point scorer coming into town, right? But they brought out all the bells and whistles. They met him with a drum line, as they usually do, which is so fun and exciting. I remember when they welcomed Jack Eichel in the same fashion, and you just gotta love to see that. You love to see a player looking happy and enjoying what he's doing, especially one like Mitch, who's been through a lot. So I got a little bit of a soft spot for the guy, I'm not gonna lie, and I think Marner is gonna fit in seamlessly with the Vegas Golden Knights game plan. He's gonna be a wonderful top liner for them. I definitely foresee him having a lovely career with the Vegas Golden Knights, so looking forward to that. Now to the next biggest signing of free agency, which just came out a little bit earlier today, and that's Nikolaj Ehlers signing a 6-year deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. And this contract is worth $8.5 million annually, which, kind of like Marner, is a little bit of a discount compared to what Ehlers could have gotten elsewhere. I'm sure there were teams offering him $9.5 million, and he accepted 8.5 to go to the Hurricanes, and I think that was a very smart decision on both parties' behalf. Ehlers is still just 29 years old. He's right in the middle of his prime. And Ehlers is one of those guys that just quietly does the right thing in every single game. His playmaking ability is off the charts. That's really what he's known for, and that's really going to be his greatest skill and contribution to the Hurricanes lineup, undoubtedly. But he also can produce on a very consistent basis. He's not going to put up flashy point totals, but he operates at just around a point per game, and that's what the Hurricanes need right now. They were sorely lacking in scoring from the wing, especially when it came to the playoffs. So Ehlers is the perfect solution to that problem. He had 63 points in 69 games during the regular season, and unfortunately he was hampered by injury for a time, especially this nagging foot injury happened earlier on in the season and then got re-aggravated towards the tail end of the season in April, so he missed a majority of the playoffs, but he still scored 7 points in 8 playoff games, including 5 goals in the Western Conference Finals against the Dallas Stars. He actually led the team in scoring in that playoff series, so the fact that he was able to come back after a month off due to this foot injury, and he was immediately able to make an impact again, that really speaks to the quality of player he is. And Ehlers' best asset at the end of the day is his brain. He sees the ice incredibly well. He has wonderful vision. He's able to predict where his teammates are and where they are going to be with incredible accuracy. And he's very creative. He's very crafty. So I think he's going to be a wonderful addition to the top 6. And something nice about Ehlers is he can definitely play on either of the top 2 lines. He can either skate along guys like Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis. He could skate alongside someone like Andrei Svechnikov. And honestly, Svechnikov had a bit of a disappointing season. He took a little bit of a step back and rebounded somewhat in the playoffs, but he was fairly absent from the score sheet for most of the year, much to the Hurricanes' dismay. However, Svechnikov is a really good shooter, and having someone like Ehlers alongside him could really ignite that offense again. Ehlers really fits into the Hurricane system very nicely. I know I said the same thing about Mitch Marner, but I think that that statement is true for both of these players and the destinations that they chose. And I think Ehlers brings a phenomenal work ethic. This man is a competitor. He tries so hard, and it's very evident in his game. He's able to make those plays deep in the offensive zone, but he will skate his heart out to get back in time to make a play on the back end too. And I feel like that's a really coveted skill in a winger, is the ability to play both sides of the puck, because obviously centers are more known for being two-way players, and a lot of times it's the wings that are the snipers, or they are the ones converting on the chances that the centers are creating. Granted, that's a very sweeping generality. That's not true for every single player, but I feel like that's a a generic trend that a lot of teams follow in those positions, right? So Ehlers really offers a very well-rounded game, a very strongly developed sense of playmaking and passing, very strong puck movement. Ehlers is going to fit in nicely to what the Hurricanes want to accomplish. And on that note, I think the Hurricanes had one of the best offseasons so far, and we're only on day 3, but they have made a really big splash, and they are making all of the right trades and signings to improve what they have to improve. The other big addition was that of K'Andre Miller. They executed a sign-and trade with the New York Rangers, and Miller's going to be earning $7.5 million on this deal. And that feels like it's a little on the high side, but with the cap going up, that's like right around average for a top pairing defenseman, and that's what K'Andre Miller is going to be. You know, the Hurricanes wisely passed up on guys like Dmitry Orlov and Brent Burns. Both of those guys signed elsewhere. They chose not to bring them back, and that was the right decision because Orlov did not play well in the playoffs defensively. He had a lot of giveaways, a lot of turnovers. He was not dialed in, and that was a big pitfall for Carolina. Now, on the other hand, Brent Burns actually did play quite well, especially considering his age. Considering the fact that he's 40 years old, he really carried his weight and played considerably well in a little bit of a reduced role for the Hurricanes, but it makes sense for Carolina to be moving away from some of these older players, maybe less reliable players, and moving towards a 25-year-old defenseman like Miller, who does it all. He is a tough-to-beat defenseman. He is very defense-first. He is tough as nails. He recorded over 100 blocks and 100 hits in this past season, but he also chipped in with 27 points, so he's not going to be the guy leading the rush or jumping in on the wing as a defenseman, but he is the guy that's going to make a smart breakout pass. He's going to do the right things in his own zone in order to get possession for his team, and he's able to exit the zone very efficiently. So he's going to start generating those rush attempts, even if he's not going to be right up alongside them or making crazy plays in the offensive zone. That's not what he's known for. And so he's going to rack up some big minutes, even strength, and on the penalty kill especially. He's averaged over 20 minutes in every single season that he's played, including over 21 minutes this season. He's going to play a lot of time on ice, and that's what the Hurricanes need out of him. Something that's really nice about Miller as well is he has the versatility to play on his offside, so he can be shuffled around with different partners a little bit, and he can play on either side, although he is naturally a left defenseman. So that's just a little added bonus because I know some defenders, you really can't move them out of their preferred side, right? And that's not a fault on theirs. It's just a bonus when someone is able to play both sides like Miller is. So that was a very smart trade. It was smart to move on from Orlov and Burns. And another good thing that they targeted is depth. They brought on Caden Primo. They traded for him from the Montreal Canadiens, and he offers another viable backup solution for Frederik Andersen. He played mostly in the AHL this season, where he put up some pretty impressive numbers, Primo did, and Kochetkov kind of faltered a bit at times. He did not end the regular season well. He didn't play great when Andersen got injured, so it's nice to have the reassurance that you have another 25-year-old goalie who can step in when you need him, who, again, played really well in the minor leagues. He still hasn't made the jump to being a full-time backup, full-time starter, but Primo is a goalie with high potential, and he serves a need that the Hurricanes had, which is depth in the goaltending position. So another smart acquisition. And the final thing that they did that I think was really smart and is setting themselves up for success is re-signing Logan Stankoven. This guy had a pretty solid rookie year. Technically, this was his second season in the NHL, but because his first season he didn't meet that 25-game threshold, he was still considered a rookie this year too. And he had a pretty decent first full campaign. He played 78 games, he had 38 points in that time, 14 goals, and he has shown a lot of promise, Stankoven has, so it was smart to be able to lock him up for a couple more years, give him that bridge deal he was looking for. And I think all these things combined really shows what the Hurricanes are trying to do, which is they added a top 6 winger, and they're really just deepening the rest of the lineup. And that could be the factor that pushes them over the edge, because that is something that was a big downfall for them in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Florida Panthers, because the Panthers, as we know, have so much forward depth, and they get scoring from all 4 lines. And on the Hurricanes end of things, that was not happening. So making these additions and bringing in Ehlers and hanging on to Stankoven, all of these things really bring a new level of offense to the roster that I think could really make a big difference in where they end up next season. And I think we could end up seeing them in the conference finals again, if not the cup finals. So they're looking loaded. I predict a Hurricanes-Panthers rematch in the conference finals, because the Panthers have loaded up a lot too this offseason. They're keeping a lot of their assets like Brad Marchand and Aaron Ekblad. But I want to give some love to 2 other teams that I think have done pretty well in free agency so far, and the first one is going to be the Utah Mammoth. They got things started before July 1st even hit, and they got things kicked off with the trade that brought J.J. Peterka from the Buffalo Sabres to Utah in exchange for Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring. So they gave up 2 pretty decent assets in exchange for Peterka, but he was well worth it to give those things up. He signed a contract for 5 years worth $7.7 million annually, and that's a little bit of a steep price for a 23-year-old, that's for sure, but he earned every penny of that contract in my opinion. He's the 4th winger in the lineup that's capable of scoring 20-plus goals, and he's done so on a regular basis in his first handful of NHL seasons. He had 28 goals last year, he had 27 this year, and he is still developing his playmaking ability as well, and he's doing so really well. Peterka scored 68 points this year on a Sabres team that underperformed yet again, did not put up good offensive numbers, so the fact that he still managed 68 points and 27 goals is really a statement to he is able to make something out of nothing, right? And Peterka is really going to shine on the power play, as well as even strength, of course. And just looking at the past 2 seasons, he's had 118 points in 159 games. So he is producing at a regular, steady rate. And the Utah power play was actually really solid this year. That was one of the bright spots for the team. It finished 10th in the league. And it has the potential to get even better with Peterka now in the lineup. Especially playing alongside guys like Logan Cooley and Clayton Keller on that first line, Peterka is really going to be a standout. And someone like Clayton Keller is going to be the guy that's going to be setting up his line mates, and Peterka can convert every single time. He's that close to reaching the 30-goal plateau. Again, just 23 years old. He's got such a bright future and such a long, prosperous hockey career in front of him, and I think the Mammoth really won this trade handily. And that's not to mention the intangibles that Peterka brings. He has a great combination of speed and strength, and he can win puck battles along the boards and dig out those pucks when he has to, but he can also finish really nicely and light the lamp. So he brings a very well-rounded game that is only going to get better from here, especially alongside fellow young guns like Cooley and Keller. I think that's going to be a house team to play against next year based on that top line and that top 6. But the Mammoth also brought in a lot of depth to their lineup this year at every single position in their free agent signings. And one of those is defenseman Nate Schmidt. And I have been pumping Schmidt's tires on this podcast, and I believe he deserves it. He played incredibly well during the playoffs for the Florida Panthers on the 3rd pairing, sometimes the 2nd pairing. He put up really great possession numbers. If you're interested in more about that, I have an article on Puck Pros that was all about this, and I look further into the advanced statistics and his Corsi and how he performed with different defensive pairings during the course of the playoffs and the regular season. But I really like Schmidt. He brings a level of reliability to the bottom 4 defensemen that I think is really something that the Mammoth need. They need more guys in the lineup, deeper in the lineup, that aren't just prospects, that aren't just young guys or old guys for that matter. They need someone reliable and consistent who can play the same game night in and night out. And I think Nate Schmidt is one of those guys. And I really like his offensive upside too. And I really like his puck distribution. Unlike Keandre Miller, what I was saying about him earlier, Schmidt is the type of guy who will jump in on a rush when he has to. He will make those cross-ice passes with really high level of accuracy. But the Mammoth have also brought in Brandon Tanev to round out that forward group, and Vitek Vanacek to act as a backup for Karel Vejmelka. And it's interesting because they actually almost traded Vejmelka at the trade deadline. They were interested in shopping him around, but none of the deals presented were good enough for them, and they should be glad that they hang on to Vejmelka. And they should be glad that they were able to hang on to Vejmelka, but Vitek Vanacek is going to be a pretty decent backup. He's struggled in the last couple of seasons, but he really did very decently in Washington. He played well his first season in New Jersey, so Vanacek still has the capability to be a solid backup, and I think, again, that just provides more assurance in the lineup. Same thing with Brandon Tanev. He's an NHL veteran. He brings leadership. He brings a lot of off-ice locker room qualities as well, and he brings a nice, tough game that the Mammoth are going to enjoy. So I really like the way that they got a big gun up front in JJ Peterka, but they also rounded out the rest of their lineup. I think they have done a wonderful job during this offseason so far at improving their roster, and I hope we see them make the playoffs next year. That would be really wonderful. And of course, no podcast would be complete without a shout out for my New Jersey Devils. And I think Tom Fitzgerald made some smart decisions this offseason so far. And first and foremost, being able to re-sign goalie Jake Allen has been a very welcome surprise for many fans and media, because Allen was definitely the most coveted goalie on the UFA market, and he didn't even make it to become a UFA before he re-signed in New Jersey, and he did so at a big discount. They signed him for 5 years at $1.8 million, and that's minimum $2 million in savings, because he could have gotten $3.54 million elsewhere on the market. But I really respect the act of taking a pay cut in order to remain with the Devils. He clearly believes in what this team can do, and he knows that he's going to play a big role for them. He stepped in when Markstrom was injured for about 6 weeks, and he played really well in that time. He had several shutouts. So he's definitely going to be starting 30, maybe even 35 games, depending on how the season plays out, if Markstrom can stay healthy. But Allen is among the best backup goalies in the NHL right now, and that is crucial to have when you really need to rely on two guys in net. You can't play Markstrom for 82 games. You have to have someone that can give him that relief, and you have to be able to trust that guy. And the Devils trust Jake Allen, and he did them a big favor by signing at $1.8 million. So Tom Fitzgerald must have driven a pretty hard bargain to get him to stay at that rate, but I'm glad he did. The Devils also re-signed Cody Glass at $2.5 million annually, and while I do think that's a bit on the higher side, I mean, I certainly don't think he deserves to get paid more than Jake Allen does based on the contributions they have to the lineup. But nevertheless, I do think Cody Glass is a really solid bottom six guy. Ever since acquiring him at the trade deadline, he contributed on the score sheet, but he plays really hard. He's a bit of a workhorse. And I really like the energy that he brings to the lineup. I'm glad that the Devils were able to hang on to him for the future as well. And he's still fairly young, you know? He's still in his mid-20s. He still is proving himself, and he could probably earn a spot higher in the lineup depending on how he plays, because he really outperformed expectations once the Devils acquired him midway through the season. And just like I've been talking about is such an important factor in teams performing well, depth, right? Especially forward depth. The Devils also targeted that, because that is something that was sorely lacking at times during this 2024-25 season. They couldn't rely on all four lines to produce at the same level. But they're moving on from Eric Halla. They're moving on from Tomas Tatar. And they're moving towards Connor Brown and Evgeny Dadonov, who are joining the New Jersey Devils for the upcoming season after signing with them in free agency. And I really like both of those signings. I think Connor Brown is going to be, again, just like Cody Glass, he serves a very similar role in the lineup. I think he's going to be a solid fourth liner who can still contribute. He scored 30 points this year. And again, he plays a very tough style of game that's hard to play against, and the Devils need more of that in their lineup. And Dadonov will probably play a third line role if I had to guess, and he's still capable of scoring 20 goals. And once again, the Devils need that offense from all sources because we saw a record-breaking season from Jesper Bratt as he set a new assists record. Jack Hughes played really well when he was healthy. Nico Hischier, captain, oh captain, my captain. He puts the team on his back night in and night out, and he can really be relied upon for anything the Devils need. And they need more guys in the lineup that are dependable and consistent. And Dadonov could be one of those guys. So I'm very pleased with how the Devils have performed so far. And now all they have to do is re-sign Luke Hughes. And apparently that might be a little bit of a tricky task because they haven't been able to get a deal done yet. And they've had plenty of time to negotiate a new contract. So it seems like we might have to wait a little bit to hear news about Luke Hughes. But once they do that, their offseason is pretty much signed, sealed, delivered. There's not much left to be done. I think they targeted some holes in the lineup. They made some upgrades offensively. And I'm excited to see what this team is going to be able to do next season. So let me know your thoughts. What teams do you think did the best? And who did the worst so far in this free agent frenzy? I would love to hear you chime in. Feel free to drop a comment. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the High Danger Hockey Podcast. We are available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you are interested in staying connected on other social medias, you can find us on X at High Danger Pod. You can find us on TikTok or Instagram, where our account is High Danger Hockey. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We've got plenty more off-season content coming your way, so don't you worry. Stay tuned. Thank you, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.